Well, I mean, of course, they only gave us very little information regarding the talks. Yes, the foreign minister did announce that they did, in fact, discuss the Khashoggi case. However, they gave no details. But as we just listened to Mike Pompeo's statement, he stated that he was reassured that a thorough investigation would take place and that anyone who was found guilty would be held accountable by Saudis if anyone was found guilty, of course, following their investigation. So we believe that behind closed doors, of course, he may have presented more details of his talks with Saudi officials to the Turkish officials here. But what's going to be important to see, of course, is following the investigations, both by Turkish officials but also by the Saudi officials, what these two countries, the United States and Turkey, decide to do, what kind of action they decide to take. Of course, Saudi Arabia is a critical ally for these two countries. They have strong cooperation, economic cooperation, security cooperation with Saudi Arabia, so they don't really want to cut ties completely. So it's going to be important to see what kind of action these two countries could potentially take against Saudi Arabia. And of course, this is potentially what they might have discussed behind closed doors, what the potential consequences could be regarding Saudi Arabia following their investigations.
And what is going to be Turkey's next move? Obviously, the investigation, preliminary investigation, have shown that Khashoggi was probably killed inside the consulate. But how aggressive would the authorities in Turkey push that investigation, and the U.S. seemingly giving Riyadh the benefit of doubt?
Well, yes, it seems like they're trying to put as much pressure as possible. Right now, we're outside here, the Consul General's residence. They were expected to carry out a search yesterday here. However, that did not take place. They did not have permission or access by Saudi Arabia, which they need in order to carry out a search on the premises. So they're trying to put in as much pressure as they can on Saudi Arabia with the investigations. And it's important to note that the narrative between Saudi Arabia and Turkey really changed once Turkey started presenting evidence. They stated that they have hard evidence, and that really changed the narrative for Saudi Arabia. In the beginning, even just until a couple of days ago, Saudi Arabia was claiming that Khashoggi had in fact left the premises alive. But once Turkey started to say that, yes, they had hard evidence proving that he was actually killed inside the consulate, then we started hearing about the different rumors, potential other narratives that Saudi Arabia would potentially present. We heard about potential stating that they might say there was an interrogation that took place, but it went wrong. So that's one potential that is going to come out of the result of the Saudi Arabia investigation. And we also had U.S. President Donald Trump actually presenting the first narrative, and he stated that maybe it was rogue killers who actually carried out the killing of Khashoggi. So we're seeing that Saudi Arabia is really playing out, seeing what kind of evidence Turkey might present. So they're taking it slow. They're being really slow in their pace with presenting strong evidence. So they're waiting for Saudi Arabia to make actually some kind of a statement following some investigation. They're actually taking it slow. Saudi Arabia is taking it slow. So maybe U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo might have put some pressure on the speed of that investigation, and Turkey also is actually putting a lot of pressure here.
And you said that the Turkish authorities couldn't get into the consulate itself. How close can we expect the cooperation between the Turkish and the Saudis this time?
Well, it's not clear. There was a statement made by the Interior Minister Soylu from Turkey today. He stated that because they could not reach anyone from Saudi Arabia yesterday, they were waiting here for hours. Police were waiting outside the Consul General's residence right here. They could not enter, so that really has taken a toll because it's slowing down the investigation. So they're trying to speed that up. But of course, they cannot enter without the permission of Saudi Arabia. And it's also important to note that just before the search was going to take place yesterday, the Consul General Mohammed Al-Taibeh actually left the country, and today Turkish officials stated that it was upon his own decision, so they didn't have an influence on that, but he did leave the country.